This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition, Love and War, Part 1. Hey baby, how's your day going? Angela said when she answered Q's phone call. Q said, "It's been a rough one, love. Where are you?" Hearing the tension in her husband's voice, Angela said, "I'm on my way home. What's going on?" Q looked at the clock and asked, "Why you heading home so early, love?" Angela said, "Your guess is as good as mine. Mom Brenda called and said that I needed to come home right now because she had someplace that she needed me to take her and she couldn't take herself." Q looked over at his supervisor, Fred Acevedo, and Fred just shrugged. Q said, "All right, well, call me back when you know what's going on and let me know what's up." Angela said, "Will do, but didn't you call for something?" Q said, "Nah, I just needed to hear your voice." The two hung up and Angela pulled up outside of the main house on the compound. Mom Brenda, Mom Joyce, and Miss Bernie had turned into the reimagined grandmother crew. With the Queen Mother playing Queenpin 2.0, Miss Bernie's retirement was right on time. QLJ and Donovan was still handling pickup and drop-off duty for the older children who were school-aged. And Mom Brenda, who was walking again and doing well. Mom Joyce and Miss Bernie were responsible for wrangling the younger children. With 4 children on the property who were all under 3 years old, it was all hands on deck. With such a large family, the family compound was designed perfectly. Everyone had their own homes for privacy, but they also had the main house right in the middle. A house that was large enough for entertaining large crowds, housing guests, and managing all the children in one place before and after school, on the weekends, etc. They had a huge playroom, study room, and a huge kitchen that was perfect for large meals for events or even smaller meals for all of those kids. So Mom Brenda came out of the main house and got in the car with Angela and said, "Take me over to your estate." Right before Angela pulled up, Q'd called Mom Brenda. He'd asked her, "What's going on, Mom Brenda?" And she said, "You tell me, son." Q said, "Angela told me that she's on her way to the house to pick you up." Mom Brenda said, "Yes. I called your mother and told her to get to the States. And she's going to meet me and Angela over at the estate." Q said, "And then what?" Mom Brenda said, "You tell me." Q asked, "Did somebody call you? How do you?" Mom Brenda said, "I have no idea what's going on. I know that something's going on, though. Please tell me that you know what it is and you'll be able to come over and inform all of us." Q thought to himself, "Come on, man. Is this lady psychic or something? How on earth does she know that something serious is going on right now? I don't know if she had a dream or something or what, but all right." And then he said, "Mom Brenda, get everybody that you can over to the estate. And when y'all all are there, call me." So instead of driving off, Angela put the car in park and said, "What is going on, Mom Brenda?" Mom Brenda said, "Girl, if you don't do what I'm asking you to do, this is important." Angela said, "I'm gathering that, but you're making me nervous. You're going to have to tell me something." Mom Brenda said, "Angela, baby, I need you to trust me. I need you to take me to the estate and we'll figure this all out together, okay? But I need you to stay calm and in control. So we're not going to try to discuss this while we're supposed to be driving. I need you to drive this car. You understand?" Angela, realizing that something was seriously wrong and her dreams were absolutely a premonition of something horrible, and realizing that Mom Brenda was right. She was often a basket case. So the last thing she needed was to hear some bad news and then have to drive from Denton to Dallas. While it wasn't far, it was far enough. And on the highways, she needed to be on her P's and her Q's. So she turned on some of her favorite gospel music and just focused on driving. Meanwhile, Mom Brenda was in the passenger seat, texting feverishly. Mom Brenda said, "Girl, how do you copy and paste these text messages again? I'm tired of writing the same thing over and over again." Angela told her how to do it. Mom Brenda did it. And then she started singing along with the worship music. When Angela and Mom Brenda pulled up at the estate, Angela's mouth was wide open. There were soldiers everywhere, and Angela recognized them as a combination of Baptiste, St. James, Charles, and Lopez soldiers. And from her previous experience being held up in Puerto Rico, she recognized several sergeants and generals. She looked at Mom Brenda and said, This is serious, isn't it? Mom Brenda said, I think so. Let's go inside. Inside, the Queen Mother, Stephanie, Selima, True, and Marley, Samuel's previous right-hand man, were already there and waiting for them. The Queen Mother said, now what is this about, Brenda? Mom Brenda turned to Angela and said, tell them about your dream, baby. Angela said, I know you didn't gather all these people here because of my dream. Mom Brenda said, no, I've been in prayer most of the morning because of your dream and mine. When you left my room last night after you told me about the dream that you'd had, I was up all night. And when I saw Q in the kitchen and I asked him if everything was okay, he told me that it was. I could tell that he had no idea what I was talking about, but since then I've spoken with him. And it's clear that he knows now. And he told me to gather everybody here and call him when they all arrive. Angela grabbed her phone and called her husband. When he answered, she said, what is going on, Quincy? Hearing his full first name, he knew he was going to have to start talking. Q said, love, I need you to trust me. I'm going to be there shortly. Just let me know when everybody else is there so that we can all discuss this once as a family. Angela said, are my children okay? Q said, I need you to be the leader that you are. Whoever's already there, I need you all to get together and just pray. Angela said, what are we praying about? And you did not answer my question, sir. Q said, I know, love. Just pray. Just think of this as no different from all other times that I've asked you to pray. And it was in relation to something at the job where I couldn't give you all the details. Pray and let God do the rest, okay? Angela relayed that information to everyone gathered, and Mom Brenda and the Queen Mother just looked at one another. They already knew. This was about one of Angela's children. The Queen Mother said, tell me about this dream, Angela. Meanwhile, over at the Salvation Center of Dallas, Donovan and Pastor Corey were meeting in CT's office. After his baptism, Donovan wanted to continue his study of the faith, and Corey was glad to oblige. They both received a text message from Mom Brenda that said that they needed to get to the estate ASAP. There was a family emergency, and it could only be discussed in person. There should be no delay. Over at Ron's law firm, he was calling Anya. She was the business manager at Belle Dom, which was located in Fort Worth and owned by the Queen Mother. They both received the same text message, and while she was deaf, she drove herself. But he didn't like for her to drive under stressful conditions. When Anya insisted that she'd be fine and she'd meet him there, Ron had it out. But first, he called the main house over at the compound to check on his son. When Mom Joyce told him that she and Miss Bernie were getting ready to gather up all of the children and take them over to the estate too, he knew that this was serious. LJ was on his way to pick up all the children from school. Q had called him earlier from the FBI Dallas branch, told him to go to the house and grab one of the sprinters and get the children. When he got the text from Mom Brenda, he knew exactly where to take them. And because Lisa lived on the property with Miss Bernie and she was the chief of operations over at Vibrantly You, she and Regina, who was the business attorney at Vibrantly You, rode to the estate together. And by the time everyone had gathered there, Angela had finished telling the Queen Mother about her dream. And the Queen Mother had whispered in Marley's ear, call my man. I'ma need him here. Oh yeah, you heard that right. 2 years after Pops Andy's death, the Queen Mother got a boyfriend, and you will never believe who it is, child. But that's not important right now. Angela had said, I was in the woods. I don't know why my dreams are always in the woods, but I was in the woods, and I was chasing a little girl, and she was running. I thought it was a younger version of Melissa, but when I caught up to her, it was my sister Jessica. The way that she was the last time that I saw her when we were little girls. Angela's older sister, Jessica, was her half-sister on her father's side, and she was out of her damn mind. You'd have to go back to What You Owe Me to get that backstory. But Jessica is Melissa's biological mother, and Angela's first husband, Marcus, is her father. Angela and Q adopted Melissa after Marcus and Jessica's deaths. Angela said, when she turned around, she was covered in blood. But somehow the dream rewound, and we were inside. She was holding a gun and she shot a man. And it rewound again, and she was holding Melissa's dog. The dog was seizing and foaming from the mouth, and it was scary. I woke up from that dream sweating profusely, and all I could do was just pray. And when I went to Mom Brenda's room, she was sitting up straight in bed. She said that she'd had a bad dream too. Mom Brenda said, in my dream, all of the children were screaming and pointing. And when I turned around to look at what they were pointing at, There was a dead body on the floor. It was a man. Salima said, y'all creepy as hell. I see where Melissa gets it from. The Queen Mother said, it might be creepy, but those dreams save lives. Stephanie said, do you know how bad I want to body somebody right now? Please don't tell me that somebody is playing with one of my nieces or nephews. Mom Brenda said, we have no idea what the dreams mean. Stephanie said, well, who does? Have you called Melissa? What did she say? Angela said, no, I haven't called her because she should be in class, but I'll try and call her right now. About 5 months earlier, Melissa was enrolled in a school in North Carolina called The Light. The Light was designed to provide educational services to spiritually gifted children. So at the beginning of her freshman year of high school, Melissa had been enrolled in the boarding program. She'd just been home for winter break and had only been back at school for about a week. The previous year, her parents had been preparing her to be away from home for the first time. Not only was she a member of a pretty infamous family, but her pops was a Fed and her grandmother was the Queenpin. And she was on the autism spectrum. Being away from home and outside of her parents' protection for long stretches of time was risky. Pastor Corey had connected Q with the FBI's K-9 program, and Melissa had been picked by a puppy that she named Karma. After a year of training, Karma and Melissa were ready for boarding school. And with several years of jiu-jitsu under her belt, Melissa was ready for hand-to-hand combat, if it ever came down to it. But she was a child, and dogs could be disposed of. Before Angela could dial the number, Mom Brenda grabbed her hand and said, I think we need to wait for Q to get here. And Angela said, you're scaring me, Mom Brenda. Mom Brenda said, don't be scared. Trust God. I just don't want you calling to North Carolina and worrying that girl. This might be a situation where we've had a premonition and it's something that we can intervene on. The girl might be perfectly fine, Angela. At that moment, Marley whispered in the Queen Mother's ear. He said, he's on his way. And so you know, Q's outside, but he said he's not coming in until everybody else gets here. The Queen Mother nodded and said, check their locations. And check Melissa's too while you're at it. A few minutes later, Marley told the Queen Mother, several of them are pulling up as we speak, and the furthest one is about 5 minutes away. As for Melissa, it shows that her phone and her iPad are both in her room in North Carolina. The RFID hasn't gotten a hit since last night, though. Before Melissa left to go to boarding school at the Light, the Queen Mother, Q, Angela, and Mom Brenda had a huge argument. The Queen Mother was insistent that Melissa should have an RFID implanted in her. She said, come on now. Radio frequency identification technology has been around for decades. People have been using it in everything from luggage to pets. And a passive chip is perfectly safe. I have one, and I've insisted that every member of my team has one. We all know that the first thing that a kidnapper is going to do is take out their phone and take a picture of the person that they've kidnapped. If that person has a passive RFID, it's going to automatically signal. And the person who has the information for that RFID will instantly be able to know exactly where they are. You've taught the girl how to handle a firearm. You've taught her jujitsu. You've even gotten her a dog. This is just one more precaution. We can have it inserted by a medical professional, and that will limit the risk of her getting any kind of infection. Q said, I am not putting a chip in my damn kid. That's a bridge too far, my dear. The Queen Mother said, at least ask her and see what she says. Angela said she's going to want to know why. And the last thing that I want to do is try to explain to my autistic 14-year-old daughter that her grandmother is not only the head of a criminal organization, but that she's training her Aunt Salima to be her replacement and her Aunt Stephanie to be her Uncle Manny's replacement. That's just not a rabbit hole I want to go down. The Queen Mother said, you don't have to tell her all of that. Angela said, I'm not intentionally dishonest with my children, by omission or commission. The Queen Mother said, I feel like you judging me. Angela said, I would never do that, my dear. But I do believe in learning from the mistakes of others. Determined to keep her granddaughter safe, the Queen Mother went to Melissa herself and said, baby girl, there's another way that you can remain safe at school. Have you ever heard of RFID? Then she explained to her what it was, how it worked. And she was honest with her. She said, now, I ran this idea by your parents and they weren't necessarily on board. But I thought that it was important that you have the opportunity to decide for yourself. So what do you think? And Melissa said, Grandmere, when you out there trying to take over the world, will this give you peace of mind? The Queen Mother was shocked. She said, actually, it would. Melissa said, okay, then let's do it. The passive RFID was inserted before Melissa left for school. And every time she activated the camera or a video call on her phone or her iPad, or someone else took a picture of her, created a video, or recorded her in any capacity, the passive device was activated, the location of activation, and the IP address of the device was captured. When the entire family was gathered at the main house, Q, his supervisor, Fred Acevedo, and 3 other federal agents entered the main house. When Angela made eye contact with Q, she immediately knew. She ran into his arms and he held her and said, "We're doing everything we can to find her, love."